Welcome to Plain Talk. Happy to be with you. And before we get started, we got a big show today. First of all, Aaron Oban sitting in, guest hosting for the first time. Aaron,
Hi, good morning.
happy to have you on. Chad is not on vacation. I've been
No.
to say he is actually working his day job. Although I always like to insinuate that he's on vacation. I think
He does occasionally need to do his day job.
he does occasionally have to work.
Yep, he does.
And also we got a busy show. We're about to talk to the Attorney General about the ongoing debate over truth in sentencing legislation. So we'll be talking about that. Let's go to our Attorney General. And first of all, I want to ask you a very important question, Drew. I saw from the governor's social media yesterday that the Girl Scouts were at the Capitol selling cookies. And I saw that the governor had the good taste, he's a man of culture, to stock up on caramel delights. And so I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite first of all, did you get Girl Scout cookies? Did they visit your office?
They do every year, not even just legislative sessions, and I did not see them yesterday. I've been in meetings wall to wall, and I'm actually feeling bad. They'll come back though, because they're very persistent.
He was hiding out in his office, avoiding the pressure of the Girl Scout sales.
I love their cookies.
I know.
I like the one that I don't even know what it's like a dry kind of cookie, but it's drenched in chocolate. Is it the drizzle over the top of it, and there's chocolate on the bottom, and there's drizzle over the top, and there's just sort of a wafer, whatever that one is.
So cut like a shortbread,
something like that, but with chocolate on it.
So
yeah, they're great.
Yeah, they are great. They are fantastic, and I think you can tell a lot about a person by what kind of Girl Scout cookie that they like.
Drew likes a dry cookie. I'm frankly a little surprised by that.
With chocolate on it.
I'm pretty sure that their caramel delight should maybe be a controlled substance. I don't know. Drew, we might want to talk about that legislation in the future.
Yeah,
but
don't give the legislature ideas, because they actually will probably do
something. Well, okay. Yeah, that was a joke, first of all. Cookies do not need to be a controlled substance. Let's not give anybody ideas. Drew, you did not come here to talk about cookies. You came here to talk about truth in sentencing. Yeah, the most recent development is we got a new fiscal note for it. And it's a big one, $269 million. I'm going to assume you don't agree with that.
Yeah, let's talk about that right out of the chute. It actually illustrates so well what this now 2-year-long quest has been to get information out of DOCR, to get candid assessments by them of their programs and what they do, all of which is having substantial daylight shed on it, even as we speak, every day. There's more and more. So I'm glad that you mentioned the fiscal note. Anybody who reads our bill casually will understand why right out of the gate, they start with a whopper. Because their quest is to make it seem extravagantly expensive so that people will turn away from the policy objectives. There's no other way to call it. Here's what their first words are. They are in complete disagreement with what the actual bill says. They start off by saying, and these are their words, by the way, this bill removes DOCR's authority to house inmates in transitional facilities. There's no polite way to say it. That is a blatant falsehood. And anybody who's read the bill knows it. It does no such thing. Its next words are the same: requiring residents to return to prison. Apparently, they're interpreting it as there's going to be a roundup of violent criminals that they've let out early, which for a long time they denied that they do. They do it all the time. The state is populated with violent criminals who have gotten out of DOCR after a fraction of their sentence was served. The bill is explicitly only proactive. That second sentence lies about that. It does nothing to transitional facilities except for making sure that people serve an appropriate sentence, the one that the judge gives them, before they go to the transitional facility back in the community. And it gets worse from there. I have now dealt with that as much as I'm going to deal with that. It is not worth the paper that it is written on, and right out of the gate, you can see that. That fiscal note it would be a joke if it weren't a matter of serious public policy debate. I have been going through this now for this material, and we've been looking at this, putting together a proposal for going on 2 years. We've had the input of lawmakers, prosecutors, some retired judges, people that will weigh in on it. And it's interesting. It's a modest proposal. It's truth in the sentencing that gets passed by the men and women in black robes that we hire and we pay in part to do the sacred thing of saying, how long should a criminal be in jail for the conduct that they were alleged to have committed, that they were charged with committing, that a jury concluded they committed, and now the judge passed the sentence. Our bill, by the way, only attaches to violent crime. It is only violent criminals that it is focusing on, and it says that a violent criminal needs to serve the time that the judge gave them. They can earn 15% if they follow all the prescriptions as the judge was sending them off to the DOCR. By the way, a judge could decide not to give them any sentence, any prison time. It's completely discretionary. But if a judge concludes in her assessment of the case or his assessment of the case, the jail time is merited, they're going to serve it. DOCR will look you in the face, and they stand up in legislative hearings, and I know they said it in your article the other day, Rob. They will say that, gosh, they don't know what the problem is. They don't have statutory authority to shorten sentences. Well, they're right about that, but they do it every single day. And they are returning violent criminals to our communities all across North Dakota. Violent crime has risen steadily every single year over the last 10 years. They will deny that and provide you no proof because they can't. Because we compile and publish the crime statistics for North Dakota, and we get them from police departments and sheriff's departments. And unless DOCR is prepared to say that those people are lying to us, violent crime and robbery have gone up every single year for the last 10 years. So they do this repeatedly. And when I point these things out, Rob, I'm going to take issue with you about something. I love your headline in your last column. You say the Attorney General is mired in a grudge match. And I take offense to that. I take offense to it because this is based on the merits or lack of merits of the DOCR arguments and on a long history now of policy enactments that at first they tried to obscure. They do it repeatedly. You just have to look at their statements. They're misleading. They are intentionally attempts to keep the curtain up so that people can't see what's going on at DOCR. And I feel like it's literally my sworn obligation to call these matters out, call them what they are, and not shrink from the debate. Now, we in the middle of this. It's been going on now for several weeks here. I said some weeks ago that this was going to be one of the most interesting policy debates in the legislative session. There are matters there's a bunch of interesting ones, and they're all important. But this one, this morning I got another call for some state's attorneys. And what I'm enjoying about it so much is that daylight drives its own reform. If we've been passionate about anything in my 3 years as Attorney General, it's daylight and shedding light on things and then standing back and being accountable for it. And as I said in the hearing, and as I said with the materials that we put out, the detailed materials about the policy stumble that is the DOCR and the intentional returning of violent criminals into our communities over and over and over and calling it other names. What I've said all along is we stand by those statements. I have yet to have anybody contest those matters in a meaningful way, other than to blandly dismiss them as you let them do 3 times in your column. They just say that's not true, and they move on.
Let me interject, because you object to the idea that this is a grudge match, but you have alleged some very serious things here. You have accused them
Very
of
serious,
blatant falsehood.
Yeah,
You have said that their fiscal note is not worth the paper it's written on.
I stand by that.
You're accusing them of lying so that they can release violent criminals back into our communities. The director of the DOCR, Colby Braun, works for Kelly Armstrong,
Mm-hmm.
who you say there's no tension with over this. Have you urged the governor to then fire this person who you say is lying to the public?
That's for the governor to do. He's inherited Colby Braun, and those I don't presume to tell governors who to employ or
Well,
not.
he
And I can tell
inherited
you
a
that the
number.
governor-
He
no, the governor is
inherited a
coming on.
number of folks in the cabinet, the Attorney General, and he opted to get rid of some of them.
I'm not going to meddle in someone else's employment situation. That's up for others to determine. But when you call a question, like when they say right out of the gate, their first words, this bill removes DOCR's authority to house inmates in transitional facilities. That is a patent falsehood. That is patently false. It does no such thing. It
Can I?
just changes the time frame when they can go there. When they say it requires residents to return to prison, that is a blatant mischaracterization. It won't require the return of one prisoner. In fact, you know what I learned this week from someone intimately familiar with our parole board in North Dakota? Our DOCR routinely puts people up for parole, puts it in front of our parole board. DOCR has already, the bureaucrats have already moved them out back into our communities. They've already said that violent criminal can go back to the community. They've already done that before the parole board is even acted. And it gets worse, believe it or not, because if the parole board rules on that and says, no parole for this person, any guesses on what happens to the status? You know the answer, don't you? You know, it doesn't change. They don't go back to the prison. This isn't Drew Wrigley saying this. This is what's happening with the daylight that's being shed on this. And it is all coming home to roost. And people now know that when they look you in the eye and say, well, we can't let people out early, what they really mean is we call it still incarcerated when they go back to your community. When we send a sex offender, as they have done recently, we send a sex offender who got sentenced to 5 years for perpetrating sex offenses on children, got 5 years in the state pen. We sent them home really, really early, back to a community center for our little transition work over there. And we let them have work release. Would it surprise your listeners that work release was Dairy Queen? I wonder if they would think, gosh, there's a chance they might see a child there. And I wonder if they'd be surprised that that defendant perpetrated on 3 more children. I wonder if they'd be surprised that he then was prosecuted by federal authorities, sentenced to 300 months in federal prison, and that our DOCR would say he didn't recidivate because under their definition, he didn't go back to North Dakota DOCR. So they let him out too early. They let him out too early. They didn't supervise him appropriately. And then he got prosecuted again after hurting 3 more kids. And under their definition, it's all good. He didn't recidivate. That's the truth.
Okay, the good news, Rob, is that I didn't actually have to prepare a lot for this because I assumed I would maybe get to ask one question. This is proving to be true. Can I just back up a little bit? So in effect, Attorney General, what Senate Bill 2128 would do are a couple things, right? Add a couple more offenses to the list of mandatory minimum crimes, correct? Just a couple. I know you've minimized that, but in effect, it is what it would do, right?
It adds 2, yeah.
And in addition,
assaulting officers or fleeing through the communities in a way that is a felony and endangers the community. Yeah, they're sure.
But overwhelmingly, it would limit or remove the authority for DOCR to manage where and how that inmate serves his or her time, right? I mean, I just want to understand this as somebody who's no longer sitting in the legislature listening to this stuff all day long. I don't live it every day like you do. I want to make sure that I understand exactly what your bill is trying to do.
Yeah, I think you encapsulate what it says is when a judge says, I'm sentencing you to 5 years in prison for your violent crime, it would say DOCR doesn't get to say, oh, you're still in prison when you're back in the community working at Dairy Queen.
And are you equating back in the community as being in a transitional?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Or a minimum security correction center.
It's not a minimum security. It is a back in the community halfway house dormitory. They don't have bars on the doors. They are not restricted for coming and going.
So that does not include places like the Missouri River Correctional Center.
No. Well, wait.
I'm trying to understand.
We would consider that that's incarceration. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It just says you have to be incarcerated, whether it's more secure out of the DOCR main building here or what you might call a less secure facility, as long as they are incarcerated, but not in a halfway house, not in a community dormitory.
And so aren't places like the Missouri River Correctional Center and the Women's Correctional Center in New England included as being places where a, quote, violent criminal can no longer go until they have served, is it 50% of the time given? But I mean, I'm trying to figure out what is this, because if it does limit that, you're going to run out of space quick and you're going to cost a lot more money.
What it limits is the halfway house. But if they're incarcerated, and there's talk now, and I'm told, I mean, the governor will speak to this maybe when he's on. I saw this morning on an ad, the governor is proposing lots more, prison spaces. They're calling them bed space, but it's prison spaces. And that security officials will determine like what is who deserves or who needs a super secure lockup like we have at DOCR itself, the main facility here, versus something that is still there locked up and they are incarcerated and cannot go out into the community and work, but they don't have to.
At DC, they can.
Pardon me?
At Missouri River Correctional Center, they can. So I'm confused about.
It would change that aspect of it. Yeah, I mean, as it is right now, nobody's offered any possible solutions. The DOCR has just done what I've tried to make clear in the first part of the show. They've just gone around and completely mischaracterized it, both for the cost and what it does. And they're trying to scare people off it. And what's been nice is we put together these materials. We gave them to several legislators. I'm meeting with several more today. People are calling me now, are really getting engaged on this. I've sent it on to all the state's attorneys. And it's weird. Not one person is, including anybody from DOCR, has come into my office right here and said, here on page 5, here's something that you have wrong. Because I told people, I will, anybody who knows me, I'll do this. I'll own that. You tell me something's wrong on page 5, I'm going to point it out. I'll point it out to the next person I hand that pamphlet to. But they don't. They mischaracterize the bill. They don't offer up any solutions on anything or to concerns that they have about, well, what about minimum security? What about this? What about that? Work with us a little bit on it. Let's put some light on for you. Not at all. They are in mischaracterization mode. I know that bothers Rob. I don't know what else to call it. When someone says the light is on in that room and it's off, well, when someone says the light is on in that room and the light is off, I don't know what else to call it. We're all looking at the room.
Well, let's focus on it, because I know you disagree with the fiscal note that they've just put on, and we
don't you?
And I think we can all acknowledge
don't
that.
You?
Well, hold on.
I mean, how can you agree with it when it says there's going to be a roundup of prisoners and there's not?
I didn't say if I agreed with it or not.
Okay.
What I'm saying is we're all aware of the phenomenon where death by fiscal note, where someone will inflate the cost of a bill in an attempt to kill it. I don't know that that's what's going on here or not. What they have alleged is that would you at least agree that there's going to be an additional cost to doing this? Because if we're going to keep people in these facilities longer than they are, like you just said, if a light goes on in the room, they got to be somewhere. They're going to take up space. They're going to take up resources. That has a cost. Cells have costs. Healthcare inside these facilities has costs. Food has costs. Guards have costs. So what is the additional price tag? Because there is one, right?
Yeah, I think there'll be some additional price tag. It's not nearly what you're implying. Keep this in mind. You know what the most important piece of data would be? There are like 2 or 3 in these articles you've written recently that they don't have. Miraculously, they just don't have it. Senator Myrdal asked a question at the Senate hearing. Just asked him blandly, well, how many crimes are committed by people who get out earlier than their sentence was supposed to be? Oh, he said, we don't know. I don't know. We don't keep that data. It's interesting. Every time they get to a data point that would actually shed some light on the efficacy of their programming, they just don't keep it. So she asked him next, well, when can we get it? That's pretty important, right? How many crimes are being committed? And he said, well, I think he said like 10 years. We compile it like over 10 years, not 10 minutes. Nobody believes, by the way, just talking to people behind the scenes who heard that, nobody believes they don't already have the information or that it wouldn't be easy for them to get. And if they can't get it easily and they don't have it, what an abdication of responsibility. Because one of the cost things here, folks, is going to be the cost offset of crimes that will not be committed by people who recidivate at high levels. And you won't have a victim. That's the most important. Then you won't have an investigation, a prosecution, a jury sitting in there, judges having to reach conclusions, county officials having to lock up, then getting sent out to the pen. You're going to have a whole pile of crimes that will never be committed by the people who are getting out and still have 80% of their sentence left. They'll never be committed. DOCR will tell you 40%, 40 something, I may be off by 1 or 2. 40% of the people at their DOCR facility are there because they recidivate. And they got a nice chart on their website again, this isn't me arguing this. As you read the fine print, it's like them providing it and nobody's noticing. Their recidivism is you committed another crime within 3 years and got returned to DOCR. The example I gave you, if you get out and you get convicted and sent to federal prison, not a recidivist. If you go back to Cass County, kick the crap out of somebody at a gas station and get sent to jail for 10 months, not a recidivist.
I don't think there's any question that there's a problem that recidivism rate that they have is limited. It doesn't tell the full story. We could talk about why that is. I working with statistics over the years, it can be hard to get when you're dealing with multi-jurisdictional issues. Sometimes it's hard to gather data across lines. But how do we know that people who serve 85% of their sentence, as your bill calls for, how do we know that they won't recidivate? Do you have the recidivism rate? I mean, you're saying that these crimes wouldn't be committed, but we know a lot of people who go to jail, even if they serve their full sentence, they can still come out and commit crime. Most of the people who go in jail, it's not like we're disappearing them forever. Just about everybody who goes to prison, even if they serve their full term, are getting out again. What's their recidivism rate?
Yeah, by your logic, we should just close the prison. It's like the people who stand up in hearings and they say, well, if we get longer,
that is not fair, and that is not what I'm arguing. I am not saying that we should close the prison, and I would not misrepresent my argument.
If it's not going to do, I'm not.
But listen, you want to call people liars and accuse them of misrepresenting. What's the recidivism rate? What is the recidivism rate for people who serve 85% of their sentences?
I know that it's zero between the 20% where they get out typically here and the 85%. And now what the recidivism rate would be on the other side of that, I don't know, but you've saved yourself an enormous pile of crimes being committed by violent criminals getting out early just by incapacitating them. Now, DOCR will tell you.
Aren't you assuming that it's saving an enormous amount of crimes? I mean, you don't have that data any more or less than anybody else does. You are assuming, which is fine. You can do that, but.
Well, I don't know how you wouldn't assume that if they're by their own statistics, the people that get out are returned to prison at a 40% recidivism rate. They just don't tell you the number of crimes they've committed. They're telling you almost half by their narrow definition are coming back because they recidivate. That's them saying it, not me. That's them.
In other states that have implemented something similar, truth in sentencing legislation, have we seen a reduction in recidivism rates?
It's different everywhere you look. It's really, that's been one of the eye-opening things for me is recidivism in every state is what they call it. And there are relief valves out of that or not, depending on the state. Our legislation has relief valves, as I think it should. It still has, the governors still have clemency power. And then the parole board still has parole power, but it defines it as you got to serve 50% of that. So, I mean, it's different in every state as you go around. It's really very difficult. I don't even know.
How do we know then that, I mean, if the goal of this is to address the recidivism problem, then how do we know that implementing this, which is going to have a price tag, even if it's not what the DOCR says it is, you're going to be asking the taxpayers to put more people in jail. That's going to, or keep more people in jail. And it's going to cost more money. So how do we know it's going to reduce recidivism?
Like I said, by definition, that people are locked away. I mean, there's a couple of things. You're right. Reforming the criminal is one of the objectives for sure. So is punishment, and so is public safety that comes from putting dangerous people in jail. And again, our bill doesn't make a judge put them in jail for aggravated assault or rape or what have you. What it says is if a judge in her or his wisdom in looking at the compendium, the entirety of that person's criminal history, that what they did, the whole thing, what they did in this act and everything else, if the judge concludes that they're going to, society needs to be protected with a 5-year sentence, the judge, who's accountable to all the people on this podcast and everybody listening, is going to pass that penalty. What happens on the other side of that? It's interesting. Like I say, DOCR will talk a lot about programs and things that they're doing, and it sounds really good. But two things that are really important for your listeners to know. One, I stood in the hearing there, as I've done for the last 2 years, and just kind of put up my hands and said, I'm ready for it. Give me your information. We're curious. I'll share it with everybody that I'm sharing this other information with. Give me your information that shows that your programs work and show that they can work when people are there for a fraction of the time they were sent to prison, and just give us any information, anything, any data, any charts, graphs, anything. Colby Ron stood up 15 minutes after I was talking and said nothing. 2 weeks. I said, 2 years I've been criticizing them on this. Still don't have any of that information. It doesn't exist. And part of it, here's the other thing. When they talk about their programs as a way for them to look like, hey, it doesn't look good. We've got all these great programs. My chief deputy even went out there for a tour and was told about all the great drug, alcohol, mental health, all the treatments, all the options, all the things that are available. Interestingly, though, when we start this bill saying people are going to have to stay there longer, one could logically conclude, oh, well, good. Longer time for drug treatment, alcohol treatment, antisocial behavior treatment, what have you. Instead, they start saying things out loud to reporters and others like, there won't be any treatment. If they do this bill, there won't be any treatment. We aren't going to be able to have any socialization back to society. All that goes away with this bill. Really interesting. All of a sudden, they'll say or do anything, and it's right here in writing, Rob. It's all over these columns. They say these things that are demonstrably false, even by comparison to their other statements about what a great job they're doing out of the prison with people. So to ask me, I don't know. I don't know what recidivism will look like at the end of 85% of a violent crime sentence served. But I know this, they will have been on average, they'll be there about 60% of more time than they're serving now. That'll be more time for drugs treatment, more time for alcohol treatment, more time for mental health treatment, and more time to make an assessment. Geez, you know what? I don't want to come back here. I don't want to be back in prison.
So I want to ask
actually,
yeah.
we actually have we're out of time, which I hate to say because they have the governor waiting on the other side of this. So, and obviously there's some questions here that we need to ask him as well. Drew, I do really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it too, because I think you're addressing the seriousness of the topic by giving us a forum to discuss it, and it's to be continued, because I continue to believe this is one of the more interesting debates going on, because it goes to the heart of what we do around here. It's about transparency, accountability, and an actual assessment of matters. And so I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to come on and discuss a matter of this importance. Thank you.